needs anything.
Okay. All right. Well, hello, hello, hello. My name is Felicia Davis, and I am so honored and excited to get to be here with you today. You know, today is World Stroke Day, and I just want to say that this is just so much more than awareness. It's about really, really getting into the sovereignty of who you are after a stroke. And so I'm going to pull up my slides, share my screen. Right. Can you see my screen? Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, we can.
awesome. So today is all about finding your voice again, really what life can be like if you choose for it to be after stroke. And like I said, my name is Felicia Davis. I'm a stroke survivor, a two-time stroke survivor, advocate, and creator of the Voice Sovereignty Framework. And whether you experience a stroke, whether you support someone who has had a stroke, or whether you work in recovery, we share something powerful, and that is the desire to be heard and understood. And I have to tell you, I just like you, I know what it feels like to shrink your voice and then have to fight to get it back. Now, before my strokes, I had the resume. I had the corporate career, the corporate boardrooms, the six-figure salary, the leadership titles, the multiple bonuses, the respect of my peers. I had achieved everything I thought that I wanted. And yet, I have to tell you, if I'm being completely honest, I was losing myself in the process. See, I had worked so many more hours than I even cared to admit. And somewhere between the long days, the proving, and the perfectionism, I lost my voice, both literally and figuratively. And then came the two stress induced strokes, and they changed everything for me. I realized that, I had made one painful mistake, and that is that I believed that competence would protect me, and it didn't. I thought that if I over prepared, if I over delivered, if I overperformed, all the overs, right, that I'd be safe from dismissal, safe from erasure, and safe from judgment. That if I stayed polished, if I stayed respectful and accommodating, that no one could question my presence. But here's what I learned the hard way, that no amount of perfection can silence other people's biases or save you from burnout. And I watched less qualified voices take credit, take the stage, take up space, while I held my brilliance intact. And I literally made myself small to stay included. I dimmed my truth to stay light. And I let my voice erode under the weight of other people's comfort. And that's when I realized what I now call voice sovereignty, and that it is non negotiable. You see, it's not about shouting. It's not about shouting. It's about owning. It's not about performing. It's about remembering. It's not about being nice, but it's about being true. And for me, finding my voice again wasn't just physical recovery, it was emotional, it was neurological, and spiritual. And I had to learn how to trust my voice again, even when my body felt so unfamiliar. You see, after my stroke, I thought that the hardest part would be speech. But what I didn't realize was how much my identity and my confidence were tied to my voice. Even when the words returned, they felt foreign. My rhythm, my cadence, my confidence, my presence had changed. I never remember the first time that I spoke after the whole recovery process. The first several times, I would always have someone in the room that was a comfort for me. And I would always ask them, did I sound good? Did I articulate well? Did I speak clearly? Because I was so in my head and everything just sounded so different than it was before the stroke. And that journey really led me to create what I now call voice sovereignty. It's a framework, and it is the ability to really access your authentic voice, even when your circumstances have changed. And so the voice sovereignty framework, it isn't just for executives, right? It's for anyone who's learning to trust their voice again. And it's built on three specific pillars: nervous system regulation, communication skills, which is all about connection, and executive presence. And I'm going to unpack each one of those pillars for you so that you have some clarity. So, nervous system regulation, that's pillar number one. And that's where you really start to reclaim your rhythm. See, after a stroke, as you know, your body may stay in fight, flight, or freeze because your voice is a part of your nervous system. It's not separate from it. It's really, then that's why regulation is the first step. And so, just a very simple practice that you can do is whenever you're getting ready to get into whether it's a high stakes conversation. For example, when I was preparing to come onto this call with you, right? Whenever you're getting into a conversation where you feel like your voice is going to ghost you because you're so nervous, right? You can do this very, very simply, very, very easy. Just inhale for 4 counts, exhale with a gentle. Do that about 3 or 4 times. Inhale for 4 counts, exhale with a gentle. Because what happens is that vibration, it actually activates what's known as the vagus nerve. And when it activates the vagus nerve, that signals safety. That tells you it's okay. You're okay. You're safe. I know your body is feeling something right now, but it is safe. And when your body feels safe, your voice remembers how to be in flow because voice starts with safety, not sound. Now, pillar number two, again, that's all about influential communication. And that is really where you really redefining the connection, right? Because connection happens in the pause and not the performance. See, when speech or your confidence starts to change, we'll start to pull back, right? But in communication, it's not just talking, it's actually the energy, the expression, and the presence. And connection, like I said, it happens in the pause and not in the performance. And so I'll never forget a woman that I work with. She told me, she said, Felicia, I used to run to meetings, but now I'm afraid to order coffee. And that just broke my heart, right? And so what we did, we practiced really slowing her speech, having her stay connected and get out of her head and get into her heart and into her body, right? Not to have perfection. And as we did that over time, she started doing her own. Eventually she came back to me and she said, Felicia, I realized I don't have to sound like I used to. I just have to sound like me now. Because as I shared with you earlier, the voice that you hear from coming out of my mouth now, the vibration that you hear coming out of my mouth now is totally different than how I sounded before the stroke. And so what would happen for me personally is when I would start to speak, I would be in my head because I would be so confused. Why do I sound so different? I had to I had on I took on this southern drawl, right, that I didn't have before. And so I had to make peace and say, Felicia, this is the new you. This is how the creator decided that you're going to be in this time. This is how you're going to show up and continue doing the work that he kept you here to do. And so I want to help you recognize your stress style because as a part of the work that I do with leaders, I use a framework that helps people really recognize how they respond under stress. Because how we respond to pressure is how we either lose or reclaim our voice. And so there are four main pillars, which you see there on the screen. Some people may go to resistance, and that's where they overthink and overanalyze. Some people may be like me and go to impulsiveness, and that's where you're pushing too hard or you're acting too fast, right? Some people may go into overwhelm. When you go into overwhelm, you just say yes to everything. You become a people pleaser and you're pleasing everyone but yourself. And then others go into perfectionism. And this is where you're trying to control every single detail. And when I learned that I'm what's called the impact tilt or a change catalyst, right? I realized that my sense of urgency and drive can be both a gift and a trigger. And awareness helps you really pause and lead from calm instead of control. And here's the thing, you don't need a framework to start doing that. I want you to simply notice what happens when you're under stress and ask yourself, does my voice need in this moment? What does my voice need right now? Does it need speed? Does it need silence? Or does it need softness? And if you're curious about your communication style, just ask me after today's session and I can point you to a resource. And pillar number 3, that is executive presence. Because presence isn't about power or it's not about posture or power. It's about coherence. Because when your voice and your body and your energy are aligned, people don't just hear you, they feel you. And so I want you to think of one moment that you felt extremely proud in your recovery. Just bring that to mind right now. And as you think of that, I want you to remember that that is your presence. That is your sovereignty. That is a place that will allow you to lead with a level of calm authority, right? And confidence. And really lead and speak on your own term and not be driven by what someone expects you to do, right? You'll be able to lead from the place of where you are now, the new you post-stroke. And so I really want to say that, your voice isn't gone, right? When you think about voice sovereignty, it's about regulation, it's about communication. And when you do those, that allows you to lead from a place of from a place of calm authority. Because your voice isn't gone, it's simply just evolving. And every breath that you take is proof that your story still matters. And when you regulate your nervous system, when you communicate with influence with calm authority, and when you embody that presence that I told you about, you don't just take up space, you actually start to move it. And you get to really lean into the new you, who you are post-stroke. And I also want to remind you, everyone's experience looks different. A little bit about my story. I'm going to stop sharing, just come on screen now. A little bit more about my own personal story. What happened for me was, I was at work And I just gotten off of a important phone call. I was an HR executive, and I went to go to try to pick up a pen to take some notes, and the pen kept dropping out of my hand, and I couldn't understand why. And so I tried it 3 or 4 times, and it still wouldn't. I still couldn't pick it up. It kept dropping out of my hand. And so I said, well, maybe I just need to go take a little break. So I grabbed my keys and I was going to go to my car to go take a break. In the meantime, I realized that I needed to use the restroom. And so I go to use the restroom and I get in the stall and I just can't unbutton my pants. Now I'm getting really, really nervous. So I go to my car and I figure maybe I'm just tired because I was working a lot, right? I go to my car and I said, let me try to pick up a pen again. I tried to pick it up and it kept falling out of my head, and something clicked and said, get to the hospital. Now, although there was a hospital literally probably 10 minutes away, I could only think of the one that was near my house, which was about 30 minutes away. So I drove to the hospital and I told them what was going on. They had me to take a seat. At this time, I called my husband and I said, I don't know, something weird is happening. Meanwhile, I still had not used the restroom. So I go into the restroom, and what I'm going to tell you now is what my husband told me. He said when I was on the phone with him, my speech became completely garbled. He couldn't understand anything. And so he had to actually call the emergency room where I was and tell them my wife is in the bathroom and she was on the phone with me, but she's not talking now. And so they came and got me out of the restroom. And at that time, I had been stroking for at least an hour and a half, right? And as you know, the longer you're in stroke without recovery, the longer the worse the outcome could be. And it had gotten so bad that they didn't even have the staff there that could help me. So they had to airlift me to another hospital. And when I recovered, well, when I woke up, the doctor told me that this was two parts of my brain are now dead, because you may or may not know, but when you have a stroke, a part of your brain actually dies. So I had had that first stroke and I hadn't even realized it. Obviously, it wasn't as bad, but I did notice some things that were happening between the first stroke and the second stroke. The first stroke, although I didn't know that I had it because it didn't take me out like the second one did, I did notice that I couldn't remember things. And so as I was walking through the hallways, going to meet with my clients in corporate, they would tell me something and I would say, leave me a voicemail, please. Unconsciously, that was my way of just automatically, because I knew I wasn't going to be able to remember it. I was they would call me, Felicia, can you do this for me? Please leave me a voicemail. It was little things like that. The other thing that happened was every year for 4 years leading up to the ultimate stroke, I was in the hospital because I had what's known as malignant hypertension. And it is the worst type of hypertension that you can have. If you're stressed, it goes off, your blood pressure goes off the Richter scale. And so I learned that I had two parts of my brain where had died. And so over the course of the next year, I had to learn how to walk, talk, write, and do all the things over again. And I share that story with you because I want you to know that everyone's experience looks different. You may not be able to come on and do something like this, right? And that is okay. What I want you to do is own where you are and use the voice sovereignty framework in a way that will serve you so that you can still, live a good life while you're still here, because, whatever you believe in, still here for a reason. And I know that with complete certainty. And so with that, I'm going to open it up for any questions that anyone may have